First of all, I want to thank the two committees for convening this hearing, and I want to commend the co-chairs, Representatives Smith and Rohrabacher, for your leadership in this issue. David Kilgore, who's behind me, and I have been researching, writing, and speaking on the killing of Falun Gong for their organs now for over 10 years. Ethan Gutman is a journalist who interviewed us on our work and then did his own. Since David Kilgore and I published Bloody Harvest, the third version of our report in book form, and Ethan Gutman published his book, The Slaughter, we three have remained active in writing, researching, investigating, and speaking on organ transplant abuse in China. Yesterday at the National Press Club, we released a 600-page update with over 2,300 footnotes to update this work, and it's now available online at endorganpillaging.org. With the update, we make our own assessment of transplant abuses and our own assessment of transplant volumes. In looking at the sources for organ transplants in China in the past, we have taken Chinese government official statements of overall transplant volumes of 10,000 a year at face value, and focused on attempting to identify the sources for these asserted volumes. However, the Chinese government statistics for transplant volumes are not necessarily reliable. One effort which needed to be made, and which we finally have made, is to determine on our own what Chinese transplant volumes are. We did that by looking at and accumulating the data from individual hospitals where transplants occur, almost 900 in all. Some hospitals state their transplant volumes. For those who do not, we can, from their bed counts, personnel strength, rate of growth, technological development, academic publications, newsletters, and media reports, and so on, come to a conclusion on their transplant volumes. We had, in the past, concluded that the Chinese Communist Party was engaged in the mass killing of innocents, primarily practitioners of the spiritually based set of exercises, Falun Gong, but also Uyghurs, Tibetans, and select house Christians, in order to obtain organs for transplants. The fact that the evidence we have now examined shows a much larger volume of transplants than the government of China has asserted points us to a larger discrepancy between transplant volumes and the government of China identified sources than we had previously thought existed. The increased discrepancy leads us to conclude there's been a far larger slaughter of practitioners of Falun Gong for their organs than we had originally estimated. What is the volume of organ transplantation in China now when we add up all the data from the transplant centers and hospitals? Instead of 10,000 a year, we would say that the range is between 60,000 to 100,000 transplants a year, with an emphasis on the higher number. The update at great length indicates how we calculate that range. Well, what is to be done? We have to commend the House of Representatives for what they have already done, which you've referred to, Mr. Chairs, the Stop Organ Trafficking Act proposal, as well as the resolution condemning a week ago the practice of state-sanctioned organ harvesting in the People's Republic of China. We welcome the provision in the U.S. Code which bars provision of visas to Chinese and other nationals engaged in coerced organ or bodily tissue transplantation. Yet there is more that could be done. Organ transplant abuse in China is primarily a donor source problem, not a supply problem, not a patient demand problem. We could end transplant tourism into China entirely, and organ transplant abuse in China would still continue. Yet we must do what we can to avoid complicity in that abuse. House Resolution 343 calls on the United States Department of State to conduct a detailed analysis on state-sanctioned organ harvesting from non-consenting prisoners of conscience in the annual Human Rights Report. I would suggest that this analysis must be more than just a presentation of the work that we and other researchers have done, coupled with empty Chinese government denials. The Department of State Bureau of Human Rights, to fulfill the mandate given by the House, should come to its own conclusions. There also needs to be a more direct confrontation of transplant tourism. U.S. legislation should make organ transplant abuse and brokerage extraterritorial crimes. the legislation should require compulsory medical and hospital reporting of all out-of-country transplantation. That sort of reporting is necessary to make a law against complicity in foreign transplant abuse workable. Insurers should be prevented from covering and paying for abusive transplantation abroad. Pharmaceutical companies should not be allowed to participate in drug trials with patients using organs from improper sources. In conclusion, let me say, when it comes to abusive transplantation, we have to think not only of the patient in need of an organ, but also the source of the organ. It is unconscionable to kill a healthy, innocent person so that a sick person can live. The U.S. must do everything in its power to stop that from happening. Thank you very much.